Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Word is Written. This is Jayden, and we are continuing our Peter in Jesus story series. Kind of, I guess, both. So I apologize that this is a day late. Monday was just a crazy day, and I feel like the schedule was kind of crumbling just around this whole channel. But we are back here with it on Tuesday, and hopefully next week, Monday, will be a little bit better. Just been a little crazy lately. Can't really see it, but there is a dresser behind me. Maybe if I go this way, yeah, it's more visible on that side. It's because we got some projects going on around the house. But either way, though, we are back with this story. And this story we can see in Luke chapter 22, verses 31 through 34, and in verses 54 and 62. And then we can see it in John chapter 18, verses 15 through 18, and then also in chapter 21, verses 1 through 19. So we can see that it is very prominent in the Gospels. So here we go with the story. Take a deep breath. All right. Jesus knew he would soon be arrested, crucified, and buried in a tomb. And he knew he would be resurrected on the third day. Jesus even knew his disciples would be afraid and abandon him for a while. Jesus told Peter that difficult times were coming, and Jesus had prayed for Peter. Peter declared that he would follow Jesus to prison or even to death. Jesus replied that Peter would deny he knew Jesus 3 times that very night before the rooster crowed. Later that night in the Garden of Gethsemane, soldiers came and arrested Jesus. They took him to the high priest's house and made up charges against Jesus. Peter followed at a distance. Several people were sitting around a charcoal fire. Peter joined them. A woman in the group recognized Peter and said, "This man was with him." Peter declared, "I don't know him." Then someone else saw Peter. "You are one of them too," Peter again declared, "I am not." About an hour later, another person said, "I am certain this man was with him." Peter replied, "I don't know what you are talking about." Then the rooster crowed. Jesus turned and looked right at Peter. Peter remembered what Jesus had said. Peter left, filled with shame and crying with regret. The next day, Jesus was crucified and died on a cross. His body was buried in a tomb. On the third day, Jesus rose from the dead. Jesus then appeared to Peter and the rest of the disciples that day and again a week later. Sometime later, Peter decided to go fishing. 6 of the other disciples went with him. They fished all night but caught nothing. The next morning, a man on the shore called out, "Friends, you don't have any fish, do you?" The disciples answered, "No." The man said, "Cast your net on the right side of the boat." And they did. The net filled with so many fish they could not haul in it. Suddenly, John, one of the disciples, realized the man was Jesus. He told Peter, "It is the Lord." Peter plunged into the water and swam to shore. Jesus had a charcoal fire ready and asked them to bring some of the fish. There were 153 fish in the net. Jesus took the bread and the fish that he had cooked and shared it with them. After they had eaten, Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" Peter replied, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus asked the second time and a third time. Each time Peter answered yes. Each time Jesus told Peter to take care of his sheep. That meant the other followers of Jesus. Peter had denied Jesus. But Jesus knew Peter was ready to return to following him. Now that story is a great story, and I noticed the 3 and 3 there. So going kind of just to touch on the "do you love me" part of it, we see often people say the different types of love, like there's the brotherly love, the romantic love, the sexual love, and different kind of loves. And it's really kind of focusing on the brotherly love there. And brotherly love is a very common thing that sometimes we often forget to even say that's brotherly love. But again, just kind of want to touch on that, just kind of let you know what's kind of going on. I think there's a 4th type of love. I can't remember exactly what it is. I know there's brotherly, romantic, sexual, and I can't remember what the 4th one was. But this is just talking mostly about the brotherly love, which, of course, they had for each other. Now, today's card has a heart on it, and on the other side, it says, "Jesus is forgiving." So we talked about this with the students for BBC, and it's very important to know that Jesus is forgiving. So Jesus was about to be arrested, and if Peter said that he knew him, he was scared that they were going to go after him, and they probably would. They would probably have tried to. So that's why he said, "I don't know him." And if you watched the play or the movie Jesus Christ Superstar, you would know that he even says, "I had to do it, can't you see, or else they'd go for me." Which, maybe not. But if I was going through something like this, like being arrested and knowing that I was going to be put to death, I would want my friends to stand by me and not be like, yeah, I don't know him. And we often do that when trouble arises. We separate ourselves from the trouble. Like at work, for example, if something goes wrong, sometimes I do something in the wrong order with another coworker and our boss gets angry at us. And I'm just kind of, doing my thing, being like, yeah, that was him. When really it should have been like, hey, I thought the order was supposed to be blah, 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 blah. But I don't. I kind of try to separate myself. Or at school, sometimes that happened. Me and my friend do something wrong, and one of them gets caught, and I kind of separate myself. Another thing is when we lie about doing something, we often distance ourselves. And that's by saying we also avoid using contractions. I just try to avoid using contractions as much as I can. But we would often be like, I did not do that. We don't say like, I did not hit him. We say, I did not do that, to try and distance ourselves from what it was that was done. So that's a little tip if someone's lying to you. If they aren't using contractions and they are also saying things like, do that, went there, saw it. Maybe saw is kind of, but like they're trying to distance themselves. So a little tip for you there. So that's kind of here. He's distancing himself by saying, I don't know him. Or I don't know what you're talking about. Not saying, oh yeah, I don't know Jesus all that well. Or like, I wasn't, with him. No, like he is distancing himself. And it's important to know that Jesus is forgiving because he forgave him. He restored him. The title of this lesson was Peter denied Jesus and was restored. That was the lesson that we were giving to the children. And it's important to know that he was restored. Not just that he was forgiven, but that he was restored. And I was kind of thinking about that the other day when I was going to college in Florida. I went to church with my chapel group leader, and he was the children's pastor there. And there were two kids who I wasn't in the children's group. I was interested in being an intern, so I was with the technical team, which is what my internship would have been. I decided not to apply, but I would have done an internship for sound, so I went to the church to see it. And when I was with him after helping clean up and get ready to go, because he's the pastor, so he's kind of there all day, he said, or the two kids came up, and they said in unison, and the mom was like, no, separately, they're like, I am sorry for my behavior in children's church. And instead of saying like, it's okay, it's all right, he said, I forgive you. And I was thinking, why did he say, I forgive you, not, it's okay, it's all right, oh, that's fine, or whatever? And I realized, because it wasn't okay. It wasn't all right. It wasn't fine. They were doing something wrong, and he's showing that he is forgiving them. That's the important part, is that he was forgiving them, even though they did something wrong. Here, Peter did something wrong, and Jesus is forgiving, so he forgave them. And that's why there's a heart, because he loves us so much that he'll forgive us, even if we deny him 3 times in a row. But it's also important to know, I believe it's in Matthew, where it says, whoever denies me before man, I will also deny before my Father. So it's important to know that while we can be restored and we can be forgiven, we still shouldn't do it. Kind of like once you're saved, you lose your salvation, so you shouldn't use that as free license to sin. Like, no, you shouldn't. You should still try to live a good and holy life. So you shouldn't necessarily try to deny Jesus, but you should try to not deny Jesus. So the important thing is that Jesus is forgiving. So we did this with the kids, so maybe we'll do it at home, but on the count of 3, we're going to say it together. So 1, 2, 3. Jesus is forgiving. All right, and as always, I'll put up on the screen my email, which is the.word.is.written@gmail.com. And if you have any questions on today's video or comments, good or bad, please let me know. Also, prayer requests, please put those in. I enjoy praying for you guys. If you don't feel comfortable saying what your prayer request is, you can just say unspoken, and I will pray for you because God knows what's going on. And as always, we'll be back next week with this video. And again, we hope that you learned something. So we'll be praying for you guys. We love you guys. God bless.